Hey folks, welcome back. Mike with DFW Auto Recon Pro again, and this is part 2 of my Untotaled series. Part 1, we were able to reverse the total loss on this 2020 Civic that we'll be working on in this video today. We were able to get the customer a positive outcome, and the first video was sort of an instruction manual on just doing some homework if you're dealing with a total loss. Do a little bit of homework, find a spot that is willing to give you a fair and transparent, honest estimate, and see if they're willing to go to bat for you with the insurance company. We did that for this customer, and we got a great result out of it. So this next video here is removing and installing a headliner, and the final video will be installation of the side curtain airbag, as well as the pre and post scans and programming for the SRS system. So I guess you'd say this is kind of for technicians that are looking for tricks or tips on how to do these headliners, especially on Hondas. Generally pretty easy, but there's some tricks that I've learned along the way that you guys might find handy. So we're gonna completely remove this headliner and put in a brand new one because it was destroyed by the side curtain airbag. And in my first video, I was explaining that they were requesting for the windshield to be replaced on this vehicle. I quoted it at $1,200, and when I went back, I actually looked at it again, and it looks like it was a little less than $1,000. So I misspoke there, but anyway, quick correction to that first claim I made. However, I didn't see any need to replace this windshield. It wasn't broken. The only reason I could think that they wanted to replace it was to remove and install the new headliner. And that didn't make any sense to me because this is a hatchback. You could do everything through the back of the car. So the funny part is even if we did have to remove the windshield, we would just cut it out and put it back in afterwards. I don't see a reason to actually physically replace it. But anyway, long story short, we anytime we can avoid taking things apart that we don't need to, in the name of avoiding damaging things or causing more putting more time onto our repair process, we're going to avoid doing that. So the rest of this video is just going to show you sort of the removal, the installation, and again, the last video will be sort of finalizing the safety system on this car and getting it shipped back to the customer. So let's get after it. So my typical process, it's the same pattern every time that I use, especially for Hondas. These are really easy once you get used to them. This one's got a sunroof, so it's going to be a little tricky, but I usually start with, get your visor down. And boy, let me tell you, wait till we get to that. That's fun. That's actually a trick that's fairly easy once you learn how to do it. Get your handles off. I don't know if these come completely out. I don't remember, but they will pop. There might be a tether back behind here that you have to deal with, which I'm pretty sure we're going to have to get this off anyway to do the whole head curtain. We're going to replace this anyway, so we'll take the seatbelt off, take that handle off. I'll usually just remove plastics on one side of the car, so like your A pillar, B pillar, C pillar, just kind of unbuckle that one a little bit. This one you can remove the seatbelt, and then I think this whole piece will come off. And once you get half the plastics down, the gap in between the fabric and the plastic is fairly thin. You'll have to unsnap these. I think they're there's probably clips that are holding it into the sunroof frame. But once you get your plastics down, you can actually just start pulling and everything will come off from the edges fairly easily. This is the secret trick in here. You got to get this lens cap off on both sides, and there should be a little Phillips head screw underneath here usually. I'm not sure if this one has it, but it might. Same thing with this dome light. Take the lens off of it, and there should be a couple of Phillips heads in there. And yeah, it's pretty easy. So off we go. Okay, so like I mentioned before, I usually start with the sun visor. And when you get into this part, you're gonna look at this and go, how in the hell does this come out? Well, believe it or not, it's actually pretty easy once you get used to it. Inside there is a little square, it's kind of hard to see, a little square white piece right there. If you look at it close enough, you'll see a little indentation in it. Then you'll also see a tab. And what you're going to want to do is press that in. And as you're pressing it in, when you're pressing that tab in, you're going to want to twist this at the same time. So eventually that tab is going to make its way over here. As this is pressed in, you twist this, and you should start to feel it drop. I'll see if I can get you a good shot of how I do that. The best place to sit to do it, a lot of people sit in the driver's seat and then they put their back against the steering wheel, and it's extremely uncomfortable, and you end up honking the horn 12 million times. So I recommend just put your back up against this, so you got a clear line of sight to the sun visor, and it's a lot more comfortable position, and you don't have to bother everybody with the horn going off. So okay, so what you're going to want to do is make sure the visor is down, make sure it's almost snapped into place. When you get into this white tab, you'll actually see that there's like a little, almost like a little slot. And what you do is you get your pick tool, get right in the middle of that slot, push down on this until it looks like it's underneath the plastic, and then twist your sun visor. Sometimes this slot doesn't really work very well, so sometimes I'll actually go further over to the corner and then try to get it to dump down in a little bit deeper. But we'll try it from the slot first. And if it doesn't work, just keep at it. Sometimes you can bring the visor out towards the windshield to get you a little bit more twist. But you'll see it disappear on one level, and then when you see it disappear, the square tab disappear into the black plastic, go back here and push on the back side, and bam, the whole thing pops right out. So pretty easy. And then the harness, just like every harness, just push down on the lever, and now you can kind of see the sun visor assembly and the square tab I was talking about that just rotates with inside of this black piece of plastic. The only caution I would make to you is not to beat up that square tab that's in there too much. I've seen a lot of guys just keep picking and picking and picking on that thing, and eventually that square tab wears out to the point where it won't click back into place, and then you'll have this back and forth motion when you go to reinstall it, and ultimately you have to replace the whole thing. So just a nice gentle touch with that tab, a little twist. You'll start to see it as you get involved. I don't have my pick tool here, but one thing I would recommend is once you do get it off, don't twist this anymore. Let that white tab just continue to rest down in here until you're ready to install it, because when you push this back in to the roof, it'll already be in its position, and then all you have to do is just spin it, and then it clicks and locks back into place. Next thing we're going to do is remove the A-pillar trim. One thing I always recommend is wear some like surgical gloves, especially with black headliners, because fingerprints are really easy to show up on headliners. I think that's kind of a no-brainer, but since we're replacing this headliner and it's trash anyway, I'm not really concerned about that. But when I put the new one in, I'm going to make sure I'm super clean and that my hands are covered so that I don't leave any stains. So the A-pillar has a cosmetic cap. A lot of times these are really tight, but usually a thin screwdriver, and you can kind of get into that gap and pop this out, and you'll see a Phillips head with a I think that's an 8mm hex at the same time. So if your Phillips screwdriver, well, this one's pretty loose, so we'll just pull this one out. Get you a pen magnet too. Magnet is your best friend, because these things go falling down underneath. As soon as they fall, it seems like they always go underneath the seat, and you're fishing around and wasting a bunch of time looking for a stupid screw. So at this point, this one's already been blown out, so I'm hoping we don't have to replace this, but usually you could just pop these completely out. You may have to sort of finagle this bottom corner down here, but usually they're pretty independent. They have these little green clips, not much to it. Now that that's out, you can see we've got good access to the side curtain airbag, and like I mentioned before, it's not that big of a deal. Just a bunch of bolts and I believe a harness. I think that's the harness for it. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. It may be back here somewhere, but the next thing are these I guess people call them oh shit handles. And there's sort of it's hard to explain, a little Rubik's Cube puzzle to get these out too. There's no hardware in here. These are pressure fitted, and it requires a little bit of manipulation. And the way I do it is I'll try to get the camera here, but right here, and right here. So at 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, you'll see little gaps in this piece of plastic. And if you get a pry tool, like a pick tool, and you go in here, you can sort of twist it back and forth. You may have to do it to the same thing on this side. You may have to do it up here, but ultimately this kind of buckles in this way, and if you pinch them together, they should pop out pretty easily. Use a gentle touch with these too, because it's cheap plastic, and if they get beat up, you're going to be replacing these. So let's see if I can get a good shot of this for you. I've done quite a few of these, so sometimes the pick tool isn't always the best idea. The panel popper works pretty good. A lot of times what I'll do is, just to get started, is I come in from the side and I just create a little gap, just enough to get my panel tool over here and in between the two pieces. This one's pretty new, so it's going to be a little difficult to negotiate, but usually what I do is just keep a back and forth motion between the two side ones. And when I can kind of feel it, sometimes you got to stab in to pinch the actual connection, and I'll show you once I get this out. But once you create a gap, sometimes you can take your panel tool, just grab the other edge, and in a pinching motion try to also kind of twist it at the same time. And again, just a gentle touch, because these are really cheap. So you'll see what I'm talking about. That's the retainer clip for the handle. So what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to get into the middle, or into those little gaps at the 3-6 or the 3-12, and actually the 3 and the 9 o'clock position is where you want to be, because you'll notice that's where these little pinch tabs are. So as you're getting in there, what you're trying to do is you're trying to force one side in and the other side in, so that it pinches it in and gives you the ability to pick it out from the top. So that's what it did here. This one cooperated pretty well, but trust me when I tell you, I've destroyed a bunch of these before I got really good at them. Now what you'll notice when you get in here is the actual insert for that tab, and you'll see a little tab at 12 o'clock, a little tab at 6 o'clock, and sort of the same principle. You're going to want to pinch up, and then this one you're going to want to pinch down, and you don't have to do it sometimes at the same time. I'll show you kind of my method for doing it. I could just pinch one side down, force this piece out, pinch this side down, and it should just snap right out. So pretty easy to come out. Now this one's going to be a kind of a pain in the butt because this headliner is completely destroyed, but all right. So it takes a little bit of effort, but just be careful not to push too hard, because sometimes you can separate these from the actual outer piece here, and then it's useless. Now, same thing here, just pinch one up, pinch one down, and pull, and now your handle's out. So these seatbelt caps are kind of weird. Obviously you pull it up and down, right? But in order to get the seatbelt off, what you have to do is, sometimes you can start from the bottom. If you just come down here to the bottom with your panel tool, just give it a little twist, it'll pop the bottom piece off, and then you can take your pick tool to kind of work around this top edge, and eventually it should completely remove. So that's not that big of a deal. This is self-explanatory. I think that's probably a 15. That is definitely not a 15. It is definitely a 14. So we're gonna pull this off and then just gently pull out the plastic. So the seatbelt is disconnected, and the way I do it, we'll pull this door open. Bang my tool cart, and then just get a grip on the weather stripping. Pull the weather stripping off. You don't have to pull it all the way off, but just enough to sort of release the tension on this pillar here. And then down here, let's see that, but down here there's going to be it's clipped in right here. So these usually just pop right out. So pop the bottom out, and then the top. I can't really remember, it's hard to see this thing. Sometimes the top, a lot of these have a clip at the top that's sort of impossible to get out. I'm gonna have to pause and double check that to see what's actually holding the top of this. This trick, I know I've probably said this a million times, but whenever you're de-trimming, the minute you feel tension on something that you can't see a visible way to get it out, try to locate where the tension's coming from, create gaps so that you can get a visual of what's holding it in place, and then diagnose a way to release it. But just don't start pulling and cranking on stuff, because once you break it, you buy it. So, yeah, it's one of those Hercules clips. These things do not like to pop out on their own, even with a panel tool. But if I remember right, and a lot of times during a headliner, there's no real reason to remove this, because you can peel this material. It's not really sunken into the plastic that hard, but on a lot of cars, I always pull off all three plastics, A, B, and C, because it drops one side, gives you the ability to pull and detach the other side without removing the plastics on that side. Sometimes you have to, especially the B pillar, but in this case, I think, if I remember right. Okay, so here's that Hercules clip I was talking about. And boy, I hope I'm gonna be able to reuse that. But the way I got the plastic off is, what I was trying to explain was manipulating it actually off. You'll see the horseshoe. So there's an opening. So if you can slide it, it comes off, and then you have to slide it back on and then jam it back into place. Problem is since the airbag went off, this thing actually popped outward. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to reuse that or not. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So onto the back seat. So another oh shit handle, a couple of push pins, and this light. So let's do the oh shit handle first. Just remember, 2 tools. Get a gap on one side. See if you can manipulate one leg in. Pick tool on the other side, and just pinch and twist and pull. That was a good one. Bingo. Okay. Oh man, it really hurt. So this one, these little tabs that are up here, definitely going to want a tool like this, depending on the car you're working on and how I don't know how pretty it is. You gotta really be leery, I don't know what the right word is, of making sure you get in between the fabric and the bottom of the cap. And I see a lot of guys pry. They'll just pry, but that leaves a scar in the headliner, and that's no bueno. So what I like to do is get it, kind of twist it, get my thumb underneath it, get a grip on it, and just pull straight down. So that way it doesn't leave a scar behind, and it doesn't shred the material around it. But again, this headliner's trash, so we're not really too concerned about collateral damage. We need to get this dome light out because it is actually screwed into the frame of the roof here. So I like to use a really thin, small screwdriver, and you can't really tell, but you'll see a couple of spots along the edge. Looks like it's going to be this edge back here, but they're actually designed to get something small and thin into. So you just stab into it and kind of pry outward. Well, I say that. Sometimes you can pull down at the same time, and bing, it comes off pretty easy. Phillips head. And take your hardware, put it in the door panel. Yeah, it's got a harness on it, and it's just like a lot of the harnesses. It's got a little tab, push down on the tab and pull the plug out. Stick it in the door panel, or on the ground. All right. So, another sun visor tutorial for you. This is passenger side. Heck of a lot easier to negotiate without the steering wheel in your way. So, same principle. The little white tab that's right here. How about that? So evidently on this side, it's easier to start with it further out. I'm noticing it's already spinning inside, but there's 2 stages to this. So you get past the first tab and now it's stuck on the second one, but it's the same principle. Just push down again. And there it goes. And then disconnect from the harness, push the tab in, and let gravity do its thing. This is the hook for the sun visor. And you may be asking yourself, I don't see any way to get that thing out. And they're actually really easy. Panel tool, and just go on either side of the hook and just give it a little twist, and it comes right out. Same thing for the other side. And that's that. And we're almost done. So now we need to remove the little control console, center console thing. And this is similar to the dome light. You'll see probably a sweet spot in here somewhere. But just get your thin screwdriver, get in between the lens and the plastic of the housing, and just kind of pry it outward. Be careful because there's 2 little horseshoe hooks that snap into place, so just be careful not to break them. Usually these will pop out from over here. Sometimes you just work your way around, and then eventually it will come out. And there it goes. See, right back where it goes. But anyway, these are those little horseshoe fasteners or hangers, whatever you want to call them. So just be careful not to dig too deep with your tool, you don't want to snap those off. And then way up here, just next to the bulb, there's actually there's 2 Phillips heads. So there's one on this side and one on this side. So you can snap this one out. Now on other cars with these center consoles that are attached to the ADAS systems, I don't like to unplug them. And certainly I don't like to unplug anything from this big giant box that's behind the mirror. A lot of times if you unplug anything with the adaptive cruise control, front facing cameras, lane assist, blind spot monitors, which are usually in your mirrors, but any of the electrical up here that gets disconnected sometimes will throw a code, and you'll have a light on your instrument cluster that you're going to have to reprogram out. Most of the time you don't have to recalibrate or anything, but either way, if I can avoid removing too much stuff, I will. So we'll pop this other one out. And we'll keep moving. So again, just gently work your way around the circumference of this thing. And bingo. Another Phillips head. There's a couple of little lips along the back edge of this. Just be careful, don't crank it down too hard. Luckily there's no major junk on this, and we have to remove it anyway because we're rewiring this whole headliner. So same principle with all the clip harnesses. There's usually a little tab in the center of the harness. You just push it down and pull it out. So now we have one side of the plastics down. All of these plastics are still installed. Again, because I don't really see a reason to do that. Usually, at least not every car does that, but that's pretty much my pattern for every headliner. Just take down one side of the plastics, and then you're going to pull down and then kind of shift it this way to get them out of this plastic. So this one I know is actually, because of the sunroof, it's got, I think it's got clips all around this thing. So this is where it gets a little aggressive, but again, this headliner's trash, so down we go. Give it a little pull all around the circumference of the headliner. And that back corner way over there, a lot of times I'll just pull the fabric out from the lip of the plastic on that, from the C-pillar. And now you see we've got a good drop. From here, since this side of the plastics are all gone, I get on the driver's side and then I just start yanking this thing to the left-hand side. Headliner for sale, slightly used. Cool. Well, that wasn't too bad. Now you can see we have access to the head curtain airbag, which is going to make it way easier to replace, obviously. The wiring harness is, luckily it wasn't glued onto the headliner like a lot of harnesses are. So I didn't have to unplug anything from behind the mirror, which is good. Everything has this, I call this space tape. So it's just taped onto the headliner. So it'll be real easy to put the new headliner in, tape everything up, and well, obviously we got to do that curtain airbag first. So let's get into that. Because it's in. You got to move fast. You got to kind of taco it a little bit. It's going to crease and you'll freak out. But once it's in place and it's level, it'll any creases you have will actually heal out. So once we get this up and get all the plastics back in place, I'll bet you this will be a perfect install. So guess we'll see. Before we get started, I'll kind of tell you my process behind this. As a reminder, I only took down this side of the plastics. I left all of these installed because the material sits in here. It's extremely shallow, so it's pretty easy to reconnect. So the trick is with this is to get this edge started here first. And then what you can do is, in order to stage yourself to get the headliner up, you're gonna bring this up and start tucking it into the weather stripping up here. It'll give you a little support. If you see some creases and whatnot during the reinstallation, don't panic. They tend to go away overnight. So even after that abusive insertion here, I'm not seeing any creases here yet so far. So believe it or not, putting these things up once they're in the car, you don't really have to worry about that too much. But again, just start from start making your connections on this side where the plastics are intact. I usually start here and then I'll go to the front. Sometimes you have to you know, maybe just kind of mock this up because you're loose over here, so you can use the corner to rest it here. And then just get your front ones in, because as you make adjustments back and forth, sometimes they get snagged up there. But yeah, all you got to do is do this side first, and then start slowly working your way down this edge where the plastics are. And you can use that weather stripping that's underneath to kind of support the edge of the headliner, so you can install your plastics. So here we go. Oh, and one last thing, raise your front seats up and raise your back seats up, so that way that'll help elevate and level off the headliner so that it doesn't fold or crease, and it gets you closer to the roof, so when you start making your connections, there's not a lot of gravity working against you to create those creases or folds. This is a pretty strong headliner. It can take a lot of abuse, but remember the gloves. And then just get your seats up and start making your connections, corner, 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 corner. You'll kind of see how this thing wants to behave. You'll see spots where it looks like it's going to be an issue, and you'll see other spots where there's pretty easy, quick fixes to handle that. So got the seats up. It's definitely closer to the roof now. I'm going to start retaping all of my wiring harness for the whole system, so that way it's nice and secure and I don't have to worry about any issues. So now you can see I'm pretty well mocked up. Retaped all the wiring down, and what I actually had to do was to get all the corners tucked in correctly, and I always forget this part, but this C-pillar that's been unbuckled back here is the best place to start, because it creates enough real estate for you to manipulate the rest of the headliner into their home. And then when I got to a point when I was happy with it, what I did was I clipped around all those clips that are around the sunroof. Actually, there's clips up front, and then there's Velcro around the sides and the back. So when you feel like you're all lined up and you can see your oh shit handle holes, which these can be adjusted, of course, you know, you got to check all your gaps around the, kind of hard to see, the weather seal and whatnot, but at this point we're about 90% there, and it's looking good so far. Just when you rewire, make sure you leave yourself enough slack to get all of your harnesses down, and we're gonna have to fish that one out up over there, but all my harnesses are exposed here, so yeah, don't lose them when you're in this process. But we're almost there. Wow, there is no shortage of 12 to 15 hour days over here, but when you're working on a deadline, sometimes you have no choice. Headliner is up, everything looks good. The last two things I'll show you on this, I know I brag a lot and I say how easy things are sometimes and how many times I've done these, but let me tell you, this was a little bit of a challenge. Was anything in this tutorial or documentary at this point that helped you out, if you were smart enough and successful enough to get everything torn out and didn't break anything, and you'll probably figure out how to get it back in To be honest, I was just worn out and didn't have the energy to sit here and document every last little step. But here's the last oh shit handle and the last sun visor. I'm going to show you guys, as difficult as they are to take out, how easy they are to put in. So the first thing we'll start with is the sun visor. If you refer back to removing it, I mentioned not to make sure that this assembly twists at all, because that tab is in a position where reinstallation is going to be easy. So you'll notice this little post right here, there's a hole for it where it goes. Make sure you make your connection, and what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of tuck this harness that's up here and the remainder of this harness either behind the headliner or in this massive hole that's right in the center of this. So when you get all that in good clearance and there's nothing really to stand in your way, you're going to push this back into place, and then you're just going to give it a twist. Usually it makes a click right past the hook. So let's see if you can kind of pick up on that here. So you make your connection, you tuck your wire away, you stuff it in that hole that's in the frame, line up that post. Should be in its, should remember where it was to begin with, I hope. There it is. So now it's sitting flush. Make sure there's no gaps, and then just push it towards the windshield, past the hook. Oh boy, and you should hear it click. If you don't hear it click, that's okay. Just test it, make sure it's in place. And then last thing you need to do is make sure your vanity light's working so you can put on your makeup, or your passenger can. But yeah, that's not going anywhere. So next is this oh shit handle. Check this out. As many of these Civics as I've done, I claim that it's fairly easy to take them out, but what you'll notice is this, actually the insert for this came out, which is no big deal. The insert for this one is still in there. If it does come out, you take the closed end and just insert it through the front of the handle. Make sure it's nice and flush, and the geometry on these tabs, I know I repeat myself a lot, is self-explanatory. So what you do is you just take the plastic tabs, push them back into it till it clicks. Do the other side here, and now the tabs are in place and clicked. And here is the again, as difficult as it is to take out, they made up for it by being able to put it in real easy, provided you don't have busted up hands like me. But just give it a good punch, and oh, that one's a little loose. Sometimes you gotta get back in there and really make sure it's connected. This is a new headliner, so we might be dealing with some gap issues, but yeah, that ain't going anywhere now. That's all it takes to put those back in. So there you have it. Civic headliner removal and installation 101 by yours truly. And that concludes the R&I portion of the headliner. Tune in to part 3, where I install the side curtain airbag and scan the vehicle to confirm all of our codes. Thanks for watching.